Okay.
I got to retweet us out, Omar.
Yep. I'm like, why do you never drink during the show? Don't you get thirsty?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't want to advertise. I don't have a Sun Sentinel mug. Where'd you get that nice Sun Sentinel mug?
It's funny because I have a house guest and they were using the Sun Sentinel mug and I just had to veto it. I repossess it. But I've had it I probably have had this since I was like an intern. If you can imagine that. Probably 20 years.
That's going back some.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you had it. Your shoulders are looking very big, Omar.
You know what? Thank you for pointing that out. I have, you know that armrest where you put the armrest up and then your shoulders are like propped up like this?
Oh, yeah. That
makes me look like Ed from
that's better. That's better.
Huh?
There you go.
Yep. The NFL draft is 2 weeks away and pro day season is over. So the nation's top prospects have given their best. 150 prospects went to Indianapolis for the medical recheck at the combine. It was actually not a recheck. It was just a check. So NFL teams have the medical reports. They've got the suitcase full of baggage for those with character problems. That means each team is bunkering down, talking to prospects, spreading rumors, proposing trades, finishing off the offseason makeover. The Miami Dolphins weren't exactly aggressive when it comes to free agency, but they did add enough pieces to ensure that general manager Chris Grier can select the best player available in the early rounds, Dave. BPA. It's the philosophy for life, Dave. I'm going to propose this question to Sun Sentinel columnist Dave Hyde. Dave, leaving the 2021 NFL draft, it would be a disappointment if the Dolphins did what? Insert your answer.
Well, I would have said before the trade, if they didn't come out with a generational receiver, one of the top, either Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts. I'm going to stick there because those are the two top playmakers. Devontae Smith evidently is rated lower by the draftniks, of which I'm not one. But my point is, you did all the ratings, you did all your grading, you come out with the best guy who can score touchdowns for you in this offense, and that's how I would help Tua Tagovailoa. And so come out with a guy who can put the ball in the end zone and win games that way to help your find out who your quarterback is.
I don't disagree with you. I think it's very important that this draft is a draft that you give Tua the weaponry that he needs. Last year was about building an offensive line. It's not necessarily that great, but it's a starter kit. It's a starter kit. We can see where progression goes from here. But to me, the disappointment about the 2021 draft, I will leave the draft disappointed if they don't get a specific running back, a specific type of running back. Maji Harris, I think that he is the perfect complement for what this offense is, the RPO style. Hell, he ran for it and set Alabama records at running the exact same offense with the exact same quarterback. So it would be a perfect fit, a seamless fit. He can make the offensive line better. He can make the quarterback better by helping him in terms of downs and distances. He can make the defense better by owning time of possession. I like some of the other backs in this draft, but I believe that Najee Harris will be a Steven Jackson-esque type back in the NFL.
You've fallen in love, Omar. That's rule number one in the draft. Don't fall in love with any particular player, especially a running back.
Not a bad rule, but a rule I'm going to ignore this year. Our first question comes from DJ McCullough, who asks, how many years are we from finishing this rebuild? If it isn't this year, then should we just select the BPA to bolster the talent level instead of reaching to fill holes, Dave?
Well, I mean, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. You go for best player available. You go the best player available that you need. You know, they're not going to draft a quarterback, for instance, it looks, right? I mean, if they had number 3, they could have taken BPA and taken a quarterback probably to help them out, or at least put competition there.
That certainly satisfied Steve Speckis, one of my colleagues.
But as far as years from the finish, this is the finish line as far as the rebuild. Now you have the development stage, okay, and that's a year.
Explain to me why this is the finish line.
Well, how many years are you going to give them to rebuild, Omar? This is year 3. You're going to give them 5 years to rebuild? 10 years? How many years do teams need to rebuild? I mean, and they traded Pro Bowl players away. They got draft picks. Yeah. You better turn those draft picks into Pro Bowl players. I mean, it's a simple. This is the rebuild's over now. Now I'll give them 1 more year as far as the rookies need to develop. I mean, it's not fair in year 1 to expect these rookies to be great, but it better come quickly. I mean, they've spent. This is year 3 we're heading into on the rebuild. When does the clock start, Omar? Whenever I talk to a GM, he says, "Has the clock started yet?" I mean, he chuckles that. Oh yeah, give him all the time in the world. How much? Go ahead.
I'm a 4-year rebuild guy. I've watched and covered this Dolphins team since 2007, and we reset every 4 years, Dave, and that's just been the nature of this team, this organization, this franchise, because of the dysfunction that has happened on the football side of the operation. But they rebuild every 4 years. Now, unlike you, I'm not counting 2019 because you scrapped that and you tore it down.
So 5 years. You're really saying 5? 5 years.
No. I say 4 off-season cycles. 4 off-season cycles because you can't count what they did in 2019. I don't even like the draft picks they had in 2019.
Why can't you count it? They were here. They brought in players. They developed players. They drafted players.
Most of them aren't here anymore. They sabotaged that whole season, that whole team, and to purging talent, trading talent. Kenyon Drake gone. Kenny Stills gone. Laramie Tunsil gone. Those are 3 of the top 5 players on the team. They weren't trying to win. They'll say they were trying to win, but they were just trying to find pieces that they could use. And really, they didn't. If you look at that roster, outside of what they drafted and Xavier Howard and Bobby McCain, Eric Rowe was added in that first year. Eric Rowe was added in that first year. There wasn't really much usable pieces.
So the fact they didn't find any talent in 2019, you just said, well, wipe that year away. That doesn't count. It counted. This is what I hate about sports right now and rebuilds. You got it with down here in South Florida with the Marlins, 5-year rebuild. Come back in 5 years. Yeah, now they made the playoffs last year. They had a good year. You got the Panthers. They're in continual rebuild. Now this year they're surprising people. And the Dolphins in continual rebuild. I mean, so you can't just say today doesn't matter. Boy,
it's a continual reset. We reset it when Tony Sperano, when Ireland took over power from Parcells. We reset it when Philbin took over. We reset it when Hickey took over. We reset it when Tannenbaum took over. We reset it when Gase took over. We reset it when Flores took over.
At some point, today matters, though. Sports is about today to me. It's about the moment. The Heat never throw away seasons. That's what I love about them. They develop players. They don't have great seasons all the time, but they never go into a season saying, come back in 4 years, we're in the development stage, which is what you're saying 4 years. I mean,
all I'm saying is have a little patience, Dave.
a little. I haven't seen this team win a playoff game in 2 decades. A little patience. Okay, John wants to know, as part of our rebuild, is it more important to get impact players now or still stash picks for future years?
Quality over quantity. I don't necessarily agree with it for this draft. And I've said this months ago on X's Omar when I took a look at this draft, because of the opt-out situation, because of COVID, where teams have only played like 8 games a season, it's very hard to evaluate the talent in this draft. So what I want is I want more picks. I want more picks, not earlier picks, more picks. Instead of 8 players added to this team, I want 10 players added to this team. Trade down in the second round. Grab your extra third or extra fourth round pick. Throw them on the pile too. If you have, and talking to organizations, an organization might have, I remember there was one year where a Dolphins executive, I can't even remember which one because we've been through so many, he said to us, there were 68 players we had on our board. And I'm like, that's a small board for 68 players. But if you really think about it, if there's 68 players that you like in this draft, all you got to do is target tiers, separate tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, the throw-ins, have players in those tiers, and you can move down and just add those players if you like those players. Now, if you covet a specific player, like let's say Kyle Pitts, okay, you got to do what it takes to go up and get him, which I think the Dolphins have done that, and that's an interesting discussion I'm sure we'll have during this show, since Mel Kiper wants to propose the most ridiculous trade ever.
I think everybody agrees with that. That was bizarre. I mean,
it was past bizarre. It was Mel Kiper doing Mel Kiper, which is just throwing crap against the wall to get attention, to see what sticks and what people talk about. While he's the biggest name in the industry, it's like all of us, Mac Jones doesn't go in his first 2 mock drafts in the first round, and all of a sudden he's a 3rd round pick. Mel Kiper just parrots what he hears.
Well, he's not alone in that. Okay, that's give him that. Okay, as far as the rebuild, get impact now or future draft picks. You can't keep trading for the future. Okay, at some point it has to be today. It has to be today. Okay, they already traded for a 2020. Draft picks. I mean, that was point A of the picks. They need more than 2 bowl players coming back in return for those draft picks.
Absolutely. Will W asks, what position still holds options for free agency if Miami misses on something in this draft that they need?
Well, I think edge rusher would be.
Miami, he calls Miami home. He is a very good pass rusher still. And this Dolphin teams, they need a pass rusher. You don't necessarily need an edge setter. You need a pass rusher, a guy who can come into the game on 3rd downs. And I think Olivier Vernon would be certainly welcome to considering Miami to finish out his career.
All right. Year 1 of this rebuild was about building up the trenches and creating a foundation for the roster. Miami carried that over into the second offseason, selecting 3 offensive linemen, Raekwon Davis on the defensive line, and 2 others. But more importantly, Miami thinks they got their quarterback, selecting Tua Tagovailoa 5th overall. The question is, what should be the focus this year in the 3rd draft, Omar? General Manager Chris Greer said this offseason was about adding playmakers, what can realistically be achieved in 2 weeks?
I think it's without a doubt that you got to walk away with a pass catcher or ball carrier who has the talent to be a game changer. Because right now, if you look at this Dolphins roster, probably the only player who would scare opposing defensive coordinators is Will Fuller. And, you know, that's not shade to Myles Gaskin or Devontae Parker or Preston Williams, but they just haven't done it on a consistent basis, haven't done it at the highest level. And you know, even Mike Gesicki. But I think that if you add a Maji Harris, if you add a Jamar Chase, if you add a Devonta Smith, if you add a Kyle Pitts, you know, those to me are the clear-cut guys that I have to walk away from this draft with one, if not two of them, because that's what Tua needs in order to thrive in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's much debate what they need, and not only add them for now, but add them to grow up together.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, you look at these offenses that, sure, a veteran quarterback can incorporate a receiver on the run and make it work, but typically there's a nice nucleus that's developed over several years for these guys, and that would be the point of getting them. So I think everybody agrees that they need some dynamic players in the offense. When you look at the really good teams out there, what they do, they have a great quarterback, and then they have you know, two typically dynamic players that can make, you know, big chunk yards downfield.
Alice asks our next question. With edge being so weak in this draft, will Miami just bypass drafting this position and build up in other areas? I'll start out with this. I think obviously outside of Maji Harris, and I try not to talk about him, but I'm clearly talking about him. I am uncomfortable with what the position that Miami's going to be in at defensive end. Or pass rusher or edge, whatever you want to call it for the Dolphins. And it's all of the above, because they not only need a pass rush specialist, they need a 5 technique defensive end to put on the opposite side of Manuel Agua. They need an outside linebacker like Kyle Van Noy, who can do various things and fill various roles. So there's really 3 players that they need. Now they can get it all in one, but I don't really see that all in one player. What makes me uncomfortable about where they are with 18, obviously you know who I want with 18. It's not a secret. But if they do select that player, I'm uncomfortable with what they can find at 36. With their first pick in the second round, because I expect there's going to be a rush on these edge, pass rusher, outside linebacker types. And a lot of the teams who are drafting lower in the 20s, the playoff teams, they play a similar scheme to the Miami Dolphins. And they also have an edge need. So the Greg Rousseaus, the Jalen Phillips, the Payne, the Ojulari from Georgia, those talents who I think they fit what the Miami Dolphins need, what they want. If they're lucky, one might be left over by the time the first round's over, and they might have to trade up in the second round to go get them. So it's a really uncomfortable spot. And to me, it would be important for them to find that second tier of edge players, defensive ends, outside linebackers that they like. And if they liked one, then, okay, it's great to wait. But I don't know, because I really don't have a firm understanding of Brian Flores' defense or this concept and scheme or what they're specifically looking for. I don't know if they can, who that player might be. So another thing that was told to me by an evaluator, and this is something that I'll share with you. And I think you have this perception that Raekwon Davis is a nose tackle. And I was told he is not a nose tackle. And while he might be able to play that position, nose tackles have to be squat to the ground, stout, because if they're tall like him, 6'7", they can be easily moved by a powerful guard or center. And I think Raekwon Davis is probably their best talent. It was told to me by somebody who actually scouts and evaluates for that scheme that the Dolphins play that Raekwon Davis would be better as an edge and or as a defensive tackle. And I was thinking to myself, if you put Wilkins and Davis on the edge, and let's say you address the nose tackle position by selecting a Christian Barmore or selecting a one of these other, even a Marvin Wilson from the University of Florida, from Florida State. If you improve the nose tackle spot and use the defensive tackles as the edge players, you totally alter and change how you can play this defense. And I don't think that's past the Dolphins because we didn't expect them to select Raekwon Davis. So it's out there, it's a possibility, and we have this narrow focus on an end and edge player. Well, they could possibly address inside and move everybody outside.
Yeah, and you came up in your love of Maji Harris with the problem at 18 then, okay? What are you going to do? In your draft, you're going to take Maji Harris. So you're not going to get one of these edge rushers that are, they're the best in this draft, and two of them are from the University of Miami, and they, Jalen Phillips was a very good player, very dominant player at times for UM this year. Greg Rousseau, and so, but the weird thing about when we talk Dolphin drafts, they haven't taken a pure edge rusher number one since 1969 with Bill Stanfield, and they haven't taken a successful wide receiver since 1970 with Paul Warfield first. We're talking first rounds, okay?
You don't think Devontae Parker was a successful wide receiver?
Well, in year 4 and 5 he was.
Yeah.
So,
OJ
we always discount.
You disrespecting OJ McDuffie here. Wait a minute.
No, outside receiver, okay? I should have said that, outside receiver. And so, whichever way they go here, it's almost like they're going against history, their own history. So, but, my thought is this should be about Tua. It should be about getting this offense right this year. And you've invested two high picks in the defensive line the last couple years. And so let's go to the offense and the playmakers. Keith has another edge player question. We're full of edge questions. With all the talk about needing edge rushers, do the Dolphins' defensive scheme need better rushers on the edge or better rushers from the linebacker spots? Do we need a dominant edge rusher if we attack with blitzing linebackers? So, that's the other issue. What scheme are they going to run? And we know Brian Flores, like Bill Belichick, thinks scheme and with certainly some backing here, scheme means a lot as more than the individual players.
Absolutely. If you look at what Andrew Van Ginkel and Vince Beagle are both able to do, they're just like Kyle Van Noy, where they're above average at everything, not really exceptional at anything, can do a lot of different jobs, scheme diverse. But I will make this argument. Neither of them are good edge setters. And if we look at what this Dolphins, Van Noy, if I had to give you a big criticism about the former starter who got banished and banished and is now back with the Patriots, he was pretty mediocre at edge setting. And you have to get better at that. So there's only the Quit Payne, the University of Michigan. He's the top edge setting guy in my mind in terms of what's available this draft as end. Also, I do have an interest in Greg Rousseau. I think he's a very talented player from a versatility standpoint. He reminds me a lot of former University of Miami's Calais Campbell. And I think that fits very well into this scheme. The only problem, and remember, Calais Campbell went in the 3rd round.
Calais Campbell's huge. He's a huge man.
Gregory Rousseau, he wasn't that huge. He was 6'7", about 260 pounds when he got to the NFL. I remember because I covered him, and I was mind blown that he fell to the 3rd round. I knew he'd be a good NFL player. And Greg Rousseau reminds me a lot of him You can move him, like most of his sack production came at defensive tackle and nose tackle and stunts and twists. He's big enough to gap, but then has the athleticism to get outside. The problem that Rousseau's has, he went from being the #1 defensive end prospect in this draft to possibly a guy taken in the second round because he looked horrible at his pro day. It was pretty bad comparatively to the other University of Miami defensive ends. And that's kind of the problem when you don't put them at the Senior Bowl, or put them at the combine, and you're looking at apples with apples. Well, he was, unfortunately, you were able to look at him apples with apples, and Jalen Phillips and the Basham kid, they moved so much better than him. And I understand he's got size, he's big, he's got some spot size to him, but oh man, he's falling because he had a mediocre pro day. And
I'd be happy to get him in the second round. That would be a guy who was projected to go top 10 when he opted out. You're getting you're getting value there. The other guy, we're talking UM. They have 2 defensive ends that we're talking about, but Quincy Roche is another one that he's going to be not a first round pick, probably a third round pick, maybe fourth, but he's going to make somebody's team and he's going to have a nice role on it. So I mean, there are options at the end for depending on what you want out of them. Okay, John Pardue as our next one. Is it wiser for Chris Greer to go edge rusher with the #1 pick or tailback, Omar?
See, here's where I know this makes you uncomfortable, Dave. Unlike last year's draft, there aren't 13 backs that'll be taken in the first 3 rounds, 13 backs that have the potential to be NFL starters. The way that I look at this draft, there are probably 4 clear-cut studs, Maji Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams. I'll throw in the kid from Kenneth Gaineswell.
What about Sermon from Ohio State?
He's okay. He can get the job done. I don't think he can be a bell cow in terms of carrying an offense on his shoulders. But I understand where you're asking that question because you like the platoon philosophy. Your backs are interchangeable. Just add 2 to the pile and keep it moving. I don't want that back. I want the bell cow. I want the guy I don't have to take off the field, the guy who can pass protect, the guy who can block, the guy who can run routes, the guy who can catch passes out the backfield and get me yak. The guy who's
going to last 3 or 4 years is what you're saying, right?
That is some concern. But if I'm looking past 5 years with a back, I'm making a mistake. I think if you select Maji Harris, he's big on saying his name properly. Personality, by the way.
He is a fun personality. Yeah.
Guy grew up kind of homeless, Dave. You know the hunger that growing up homeless makes you have. Workhorse, Alabama, did it at the highest level. People knock him for his speed and for his amount of the workload that he's had in 2 years at Alabama. I'm sorry.
I don't think anybody's knocking him, Omar. He is impressive. I absolutely. He weighs 230 pounds. I mean, he's a big guy. So I see why you want him. Now, the question to me is value over your other option. And in the NFL, so what you're saying, if you're taking him there, he will be a top 3 back, top 4 back in the NFL.
Top 5.
Okay. And you look historically, it just doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work. And he was great coming out of Georgia. And at 18, when you can get a guy in the second round. Now you'll be a better offense. You get him and you get Jamar Chase or something like that. No question, you got two playmakers who can help you. We're talking value here.
Let me ask you this question, so we can put this to rest, because I don't want to talk about Maji Harris for the next two shows, because you know how I feel. If I talk about him too much, he's going to be selected before Miami gets their opportunity at 18. That's just the way I feel.
You're going to switch.
Or Kyle Pitts. Who? Well,
I don't. I would. There, Kyle Pitts does, because he is a matchup horror for defenses. Okay, potentially in the NFL. So,
my thing is, you said Jamar Chase, not Pitts?
No, I said Pitts.
Okay, yeah. My point is, Maji Harris comes out maybe once every 4 years. Jamar Chase comes out every other year in a draft. I might miss out on my opportunity to get him this year, but I'll get my chance next year or the year after that. There hasn't been a back that I've been this excited about since Nick Chubb, and that was a couple years ago. And before that, it was Ezekiel Elliott, and before that, it was Todd Gurley. And those are the types of talents that I want on this team, because they make the quarterback's job easier. And if my goal this offseason is to help Tua, that's the number one thing that I could do, is I could give him a power back that gets him 4 yards, puts him in a 2nd and 4, opens up the play action on second down, catches passes out the backfield on third down, protects my quarterback, helps me finish out games with the 4-minute offense when I have a lead, helps keep defenses off the defense off the field so they can rest more. They're playing less snaps because I can play ball control. That's the number one thing that you can do to help Tua.
Well, we're talking philosophy of draft, philosophy of roster building in this era, and more than talent of Maji Harris, to be honest with you. And, my thought is, look, I agree with you, everything about Maji Harris. My only point is, you look at these drafts, the running backs don't hold up the value-wise like
they don't.
Or they go in the second round and they surprise you. A Derrick Henry, a Nick, those are the, so that's my only issue. It's roster building and philosophy more than the talent of Maji Harris.
Hell, and I'll say this: Dolphins, they could very well just skip selecting a running back and go sign Le'Veon Bell. They batted their eyes at him many, and I know you probably think he's past his prime and he's done, and he's
I don't know done, but you're talking bell cow and all that. He's done as that.
Phenomenal in the NFL too. I forgot to mention him when I mentioned the others. You can wait. You cannot address it, and let me not be disrespectful to Myles Gaskin, because when you look at productivity, let's say Myles Gaskins was a rookie last year and not a 7th-round pick who had to wait and then got his chance because everybody else was a failure and finally played well. Myles Gaskin probably would have been the 4th most productive rookie back if he was a rookie. I mean, 3rd most productive rookie back if he was a rookie. We're talking, I believe, like 910 all-purpose yards in 12 games. That's nothing to turn your nose up at. And if the offensive line improves, maybe he improves.
All right, Mark has a timely one right now. Which draft prospect has surprised you the most during the draft process? Really what he's asking is whose conversation has changed the most, right? I mean, that's really the question here. We went... people have been doing mock drafts probably since November. And we're now in April, and we went literally 4 months with Mac Jones maybe sneaking into the 1st round. And all of a sudden he's going to be the number 3 pick. I find that just hard to even believe. Now, is that mock drafts, these draftniks, catching up with what pro scouts are actually thinking, or is this a complete smokescreen? And Mac, see, my thought is always the initial mock drafts are irrelevant because, and typically when a guy's rising, that means, okay, these finally the mock drafts have caught up to how pro scouts are thinking.
Not just pro scouts, the evaluators, the people who make them.
Because
People don't understand the pro scouts, the pro or the college scouts, they don't make these decisions. And half the time they're left out in the dark about these decisions or the thought process. When the Miami Dolphins make a selection and their thought process on their plan, like they don't realize the plan isn't divulged to everybody. Steve Ross
it's not divulged to anybody.
No. It's divulged to Steve Ross. And
I'll go to the biggest surprise of the Dolphin draft history. The craziest draft day was Cam Cameron and Randy Mueller drafting Ted Ginn Jr. over Brady Quinn. Remember? There were three people who knew what they were going to do: Randy Mueller, the GM, Cam Cameron, and Wayne Huizenga. Okay, that was it. That was it. And so in the draft room, as Brady Quinn's falling, a scout turned to them and he said, "Oh, this is working out just perfectly for us." And they didn't say, Randy Mueller didn't say anything. He thought to himself, "You have no idea." Okay, so yes, these GMs keep the truth away from even their own people. Absolutely. So in conversations, they don't slip up, "Oh, we really like this guy," or whatever.
And here's the thing, and I've said this before. People in the NFL, they gossip like little schoolgirls. And here's all these combines and pro days and conversation with agents and the chatter is just going and going and going and going and going. And I don't think it benefits people to tell people the truth. All of a sudden, the 49ers trade up to number 3, and Matt Jones is their guy, locked and loaded. So, like, who absolutely just says, "Yeah, we trade up to 3 for Matt Jones"? Like,
no, I agree. I agree with that. And to piggyback off that idea, my biggest surprise, as the question was, which draft prospect has surprised you the most? My surprise is Justin Fields is dropped. There was a time when it was, he was going to be the second pick overall.
Yeah.
Over Zach Wilson, or in the mix with. Then he was in the mix with Zach Wilson. Now he's being rated by people as the 5th prospect. And again, is this the mock drafters catching up with what the evaluators think, or is there a lot of smoke going on out there? I don't have the answer for that.
I actually think he's going to be the number 3 pick. I think the trade up was done for him. I just think it's about creating that smoke so that you can ensure yourself that the 49ers are going to get the player that they want. People talk about how Matt Jones fits into their offense and the West Coast offense. I mean, if I remember Kyle Shanahan, he needs an athletic quarterback. Didn't his dad always use athletic quarterbacks? Since when is Mac Jones an athletic quarterback?
Well, he had Matt Ryan in San Francisco, or in Atlanta, excuse me.
Yeah,
and Jimmy Garoppolo.
He comes from a West Coast offense, which needs and requires an athletic quarterback. That's Justin Fields, not Matt Jones, but that's neither here nor there. What has disappointed me about this process, and I've addressed this a couple of times, I'm always uncomfortable and very, very closely monitor what is said about the African-American quarterbacks. And this goes back to the days of the Peter Warricks and the Anquan Boldens being changed from quarterbacks, because they were quarterbacks, to wide receiver and playing other position, because it's just not my personal taste. But I very much so have a problem with people nitpicking his work ethic, his desire for the game, his mechanics, his intelligence. And that's what you hear. And these are coded words and coded language. And it always makes me feel uncomfortable, because it's always the African-American quarterback that has to endure this, has to deal with this. And then the Lamar Jacksons of the world are, selected late in the first round. The Dak Prescotts of the world selected in the 4th round. Even Patrick Mahomes not hyped up like he should have been talent-wise in that draft. And I just find it so disheartening and problematic and troublesome. Now, there are quarterbacks who have not helped them in this process. Washington selected Dwayne Haskins, and he had similar coded word and issues, and they turned out to be fairly accurate. But it just makes me uncomfortable now. I know all prospects have to take on this baggage, and people in the draft process, they want to find their warts and they want to tell you what's wrong with them. Devontae Parker's too thin to play wide receiver. He's not going to be durable, even though he played 58 games without getting an injury. This process is about finding the wart, highlighting it, telling you why this guy isn't going to be as great as you think he is. Then when you draft him, you'd say, but it makes me uncomfortable what's happening to Justin Fields, and I just find it extremely disappointing. Do you hear anything negative about Zach Wilson?
Yeah, and to that end almost, I don't know what to trust as nobody.
That's true.
On this end of what's being said, because if a team really likes Justin Fields, they're going to put out something that they don't like him, okay? And a lot of that's gotten out. So I don't know, again, is this smoke screen? Is this accurate? Or are the games being played?
Like Justin Herbert, Dolphins were absolutely, at this point last year, I was all in a panic because Justin Herbert was going to be the Dolphin selection at 5.
Yeah, and you wish he was now after his rookie year, Omar.
Nope. Ride or die, Dave. Ride or die.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll put it this way: if there was a redraft here, and there's no conclusions, we all know. If there was a redraft, Justin Herbert would be picked by 31 teams right now first. Okay, over Tua. That's just the way the rookie season's played out. Again, it doesn't mean in 2 years or 3 years it all changes, but that's the way it is. Okay.
I'm just fine with the quarterback that the Dolphins have. I'm confident that he will have a better career than Justin Herbert. Could be wrong, but I like
maybe they both have great careers.
Absolutely. That's just like Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers. Hopefully that's the case. While this might be draft season for the casual fan, it's also lying season in the NFL, and we've addressed that a little bit on the show previously. Teams purposely put out fake information to create smoke screens. We've talked about last year this time, Justin Herbert, Dolphins were locked and loaded. That was going to be their quarterback. Then when we got to the number 5 pick, both quarterbacks were sitting there staring at them. Even though there was so much talk about Tua and the medical red flags, Justin Herbert was picked 6. The Miami Dolphins selected Tua Tagovailoa at 5. You just never know what to believe. Plenty of news you're going to hear in the next week is what teams want you to think and what agents want teams to think. There's a lot of gamesmanship being played right now. Dave, what's your favorite story about the games that these teams play?
I just think it's a general story. There are times, like I mentioned last week, Mike Tannenbaum saying that the Cleveland quarterback, Baker Mayfield, he shouldn't be compared to Drew Brees because he's not. Drew Brees won state tennis titles in high school, and Baker Mayfield isn't nearly that athletic. Well, maybe he will be compared to Drew Brees if after year 3 or 4 he starts to pick up his game, but he's not there. So, but you get a sense in talking to people sometimes, where they want to go and what they want to do. I mentioned before the whole Brady Quinn thing. The Dolphins did nothing to tamp that down, that they were going to take Brady. Why would they? Why would they tamp any of that down? Now, the interesting thing about the Dolphins now, from what I sense, they let nothing out.
Absolutely.
There's nothing getting out.
Not a thing.
Whatever they do, people are going to say, "Oh, that's a surprise," or "Yeah, that's what they should do." But I really don't know where they want to go with this pick.
Well, you do know where they want to go from this standpoint. When Chris Greer spoke to us for the first time in the offseason, his message, and it was a very coded message. He had 2 messages. Tua is our quarterback, and we're going to add playmakers. That was the whole 15-minute session.
That doesn't mean they're going to add him with the 6th pick, though.
That's a very good point. They did add Will Fuller, who is a playmaker. And here's my point about the whole playmaker thing. How many playmakers do you think they can really hold and utilize? If you got Will Fuller, you got Mike Gesicki, you got Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. That's 4, correct?
Well, again, Will Fuller signed for a year. The other, Gesicki showed in the right offense he can be a dynamic. Okay. Now, is he pro player? We haven't seen that for a full season. We haven't seen it, but so you need some guy who you think is going to stay healthy for the year and can be here for the next.
Like a message you want to get across, Dave.
I'm just saying, look at their receiving core, okay? And a lot of guys have missed a lot of time. And that's the thing about Devontae Smith. We all talk, is he too small? Is he too small? He didn't miss a game his last 2 years. He played 39 games his last 3 years at Alabama in the SEC. So if he's too small, yes. Is he a small frame? He's shown that he plays. He evidently gets out of harm's way well enough that he can make big plays.
Yeah. If he's a selection at 6, I don't even concern myself about the size. And here's the reason why I don't. I remember 2 or 3 years ago, Hollywood Brown, South Florida kid, I just thought he was going to be a difference maker. I thought he was an impact player. I thought he was a spacer. I thought he was a dynamic weapon, and I still do believe that. Did you know he was in that draft at 166 pounds? 5'9", 166 pounds. Went in the first round. You didn't hear anybody talking about, oh, God, is he going to be durable, and is he going to hold up, and is he going to have the frame to play in the NFL? 166 pounds. So
he went in the 20s, though, mid-20s, as opposed to 6 overall. So
I think Devontae Smith is going to be in the teens. I do think he's going to be. I don't know if he's going to be selected at 6, but I don't have a problem with it. And Jalen,
Me neither.
Waddle, people have this perception and theory that he's so much bigger than Devontae Smith. He's actually not. He's like 7 pounds heavier and he's shorter. They're both dynamic athletes. Just add one and keep it moving. Hell, Devontae Parker, it looks like a 6'3", 220 pounds, and he struggled his entire career. So you just never know what you're going to add and what issues they're going to have. So I don't even worry about it, Dave.
All right, Barry Jefferson has our next question. Are you a believer that the Dolphins' player evaluation of talent in the first round? Have you seen Chris Greer hit on 2 to 3 bona fide studs in the first 3 rounds of the draft?
I think we can, if we're going to look at the 5-year history that Chris Greer has had, the studs are Laramie Tunsil, Xavier Howard, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Then you could also throw Mike Gesicki and Jerome Baker into this pile. I don't know if they're necessarily studs, but they've shown you that they were good first-round picks. They'll both walk away with very nice second-year contracts, and I think that that's the goal for any player. Now, you look at the lowlights, the misses. The Leonte Carrus, traded up in the 3rd round to get him in 2016. He was a bust. Charles Harris, first-round bust. Cordrea Tankersley, 3rd-round bust. And then the jury's still out on Michael Dieter, but we can really say, unless they're moving him to center and he's in the mix for a starting spot, that was also a miss in the 3rd round of the 2019 draft. I think Chris Greer is hit or miss, but he's shown me that he can identify studs like Tunsil and Howard and Minkah and add them to your team. I think he needs to get more Gesickis and Bakers. Those to me, the meat and potatoes, the guys you select in the 2nd and 3rd round, that's how you build a solid foundation, which goes back to my argument, Dave. I want quantity in this draft. If you told me I could trade my 18th pick for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, I'm probably doing it. As long as Maji Harris still isn't on board. But yeah, I want quantity, and I think that that's how you build a successful NFL franchise, as opposed to getting up and getting higher picks.
Well, I'm not going to disagree. The more darts you can throw at the board, the better the chance of landing one. But I am going to say they need to get talent in return. They need high talent. They have one elite player. Now, do any of these first or second year players develop into it? That's part of the plan. But right now, they have one elite player on the roster. Okay, yes, I'm not dismissing the need for average players. Your system, okay? But at the same time, you need a handful of high-end players, and you're six. You had the third pick, now you have the sixth pick. That's what you got to go with, and you need to hit big on that, and you need talent there.
Laird W. Jones asked an important question: does a player from a small school always worry you because college recruiters didn't rate them very high? And I'll feed you this question with preference to this. I remember Dennis Hickey's first draft. That was a draft where he had Jarvis Landry and whoever was taken in the Juwan James. Outside of those two players who were taken in the first and second rounds, that draft was full of small school players, the Billy Turners, the Walt Aikens, the Terrence Fidei. There was also a linebacker in that draft, in that 2014 draft. And I wrote a column. One of my biggest concerns about that draft was small school guys, because in the history of me covering the Dolphins, small school players take a longer time to adjust to the league, get acclimated, and make a contribution. And lo and behold, that class took a while. Outside of Jarvis and Juwan James, Billy Turner's probably the best player in that draft class, and he's still a starter with the Green Bay Packers, but he got cut by Miami and sort of re-emerged in the NFL. But yeah, small school players do bother me. They do. There's a reason that they got there, and yeah, you can find a diamond in a rough. You just can't fill your entire draft class with small school players.
Everybody looks for some universal thought like that. They don't bother me. Good talent evaluation is good talent evaluation. And I'll go back to Bill Parcells, one of his first draft, one of his first draft. And they were so happy about this draft in the Dolphins. In 2010, Jared Odrick, Penn State, Koa Misi came from Utah, or where'd he, and John Jerry, AJ Eds. These were all big school. And not only big school, they coached the Senior Bowl. These were captains. They loved them. They thought, hey, you go down the list of that draft, all big, all captains. We got leaders. We got talent. So, what it comes down to, there's no universal big school or small school. You can find anecdotal evidence that works either way. What you need is a good talent evaluator and a good talent evaluator for your system, okay? And there's talent all over. You just got to know how to see it.
Definitely. I agree with you. And I think that, just find the players that you like. I mean, I've got my man crush list, and you've got, Russell Wilson. Nobody could talk Dave Hyde off Russell Wilson. It's
I'm a broken man, Omar. I'm a broken man.
Just find the talent that you like. I've always been big on some of the prospects. I'm not really anymore, but find the teams that you like, the coaches, coaches that they're going to be proven product, like Don Solinger. Don Solinger sent a polished, proven, all-purpose 3-down back to the NFL. Go find a Don Solinger who coaches quarterbacks or coaches cornerbacks or coaches linebackers, and feast on that. I believe there was a Missouri defensive end coach who came and coached Miami's defensive ends for a minute. I can't remember his name, and then he went to Alabama.
Yeah, he's very top end guy. Yeah.
Go find those players and those coaches and feast on them. That's how I would approach the draft. Our final questions come from Duke Dennis, who wants to know, what would be the minimum you would take if a team in the second round wants to trade into the first round and they want your 18th pick? Now, I'll preface this for you, Dave. The 18th pick is worth 900 trade value points, which is the equivalent of a team's second, third, and fourth round selection. So if I say to you the Panthers could offer Miami their pick number 39, pick number 73, pick number 114 for Miami's 18th, that even gives you that the Panthers, their trade would be 902 points. Do you do that deal, Dave Hyde?
Depending on what I think of the player at 18 that I can get, depending on that, yes, I do the deal, because my thought is the running backs, okay, they need a running back. Okay, we're all agreeing. Now, you're not going to – Maji Harris is in doubt at 34, okay, which is where they would pick next. Okay, high doubt. You're passing on him, okay? So and I'm using him as an example. How much do you love him? How much do you love him? Now, you can trade up. You'll have draft picks. Take a couple of those draft picks and trade back into the first round and maybe get them. But for our conversation, we'll say you're bypassing them, okay? But yeah, I would you're getting another second round pick. You're getting another third pack. And this is a draft where you look at the receivers. There's depth of the receiver. There's depth of a lot of linebackers, positions that you need. And so, I grip my teeth. I really, there are levels of first round picks. The top 10 is one thing. We're now into the second half of the first round.
Yeah.
And so, I probably would trade back.
I would too, as long as Maji Harris is not there. That is my deal breaker. Or a guy like a Jalen Waddle falls to 18. I'm a little uncomfortable with the edge players projected in the first round, and there's a reason why all of them are sliding, and even the Jalen Phillips, he's got the medical issue, and can you get past it, a history of concussions? Those things make teams nervous. I'm more comfortable, and I said this early in the show, I want more picks, not higher picks. So I would definitely do the trade, because if I do that trade, as long as Maji Harris isn't there, I could potentially pick up a center, an edge player, a running back, all for 18, where all I could get is one player with 18. I could address so many of my needs, but it really depends on how I feel about the second tier talent in this draft. And I'm not really comfortable with the first tier talent, because a lot of these guys, you're going to have to project what they could have done in, Greg Rousseau, Micah Parsons, all these opt-out guys. You're projecting what they could have done, should have done, would have been, how they would have handled the attention, whether they would have been durable. There's a lot of projection. It makes me queasy, Dave, to quote Joe Philbin.
Yeah, look, the bottom line, philosophically, you want more picks. So yes. I get it. Everybody loves to trade down. Now, I'm not, and Brian Flores, I thought, said it right. Didn't want to trade out of the top 10.
Yes.
Because you look at
yes,
where the cream of the talent is, and so in most drafts, it's more Pro Bowlers come out of the top 10, obviously, and there's it falls dramatically after that. So, but yeah, depending on, again, I remember Chris Greer refused to trade down at, what was Minka Fitzpatrick, number 11?
Yes.
And because he loved Minka Fitzpatrick, and he was right. Okay.
Good offer on the table.
Yeah, and he was right, unfortunately.
Salary match that had to be taken to Chris Greer's office. I got that story. That's a real good story right there. And the owner just sat back. He had in mind who he wanted to take, but he let his people do their thing, and ended up with Minka Fitzpatrick. They made the right pick. Just didn't pan out for you. So that's the draft for you, Miami Dolphin fans. Hopefully this year will be better than past years. X's and Omar will be back on Wednesday at noon to talk more about the draft. Next week is the week leading up to the week of the draft. So We'll be back to talk about more draft prospects, more Dolphins talk. You can find X's and Omar on the Sentinel website. You can find us on any site that you find all your podcasts. Hopefully you favorite it, like it, so it can be there for you when it's locked and loaded. You can use the X's and Omar hashtag on Twitter to ask questions. We'll not only use them for the show, but we'll also use them for the Dolphins Q&A. Always a pleasure, Dave. Thank you to everybody who does the show. Sean, you did a phenomenal job producing. We will see you next week, Wednesday.